Hello, I'm Tim McClanahan. I am the principal investigator of this Feed the Future project in Kenya, where we're trying to understand the sustainable levels of fishing and it's in an area with very high biodiversity and likely to be a climate refugia. This project is located on the border of Kenya and Tanzania in the far southern area. This is a biodiversity center. It has high diversity of fish and corals. It has a marine protected area and reserve, the Kisiti Marine Park and Punguti Reserve, both of which are recognized as some of the best parks, maybe the best park on the African coastline. And it's surrounded by communities of people that are highly dependent on fisheries resources. In this area, fish catch monitoring has not been undertaken, and it's unknown what the levels of production and sustainability are. And our project was to undertake this collaborative and participatory approach to better understand the status of these fisheries, to build the capacity to measure fish catch accurately, and to determine what the production potential is in this area in order that we can help develop policies and management systems for fishery sustainability. We're also involved in trying to understand people's perceptions of the future and how they see the future, a better future in terms of sustainable fisheries and other sorts of development plans. One of the things we've been doing with this project is measuring fish biomass or stocks in various areas within this general region. And I've been doing this for some time, and this allowed me to complete some of these surveys. And one of the key things we're trying to ask from these stock assessment surveys is what is the productivity of these fish and fisheries in this area. One of the fisheries independent ways to do this is to look at recovery of fish in closures. So what you're seeing here is the fish biomass in different categories of total, fishable, target, and non-target fish as a function of the time since closures. One of the benefits of this area is that you have this old Kisiti Park which has been closed to fishing for over 40 years, and you have myself doing fish stock assessments for much of that time. And we have a number of other closures in the region, 2 in Tanzania and another one in Kenya, that allow us to estimate recovery rates in these areas. And we can do this and compare that with recovery rates that we've determined in other fisheries in the region. And one of the interesting things here that we found out is the recovery rates are considerably slower, about half the rate at which it's been determined throughout the region. So our R value is 0.10, which is and compared to 0.23 for a regional average. What that means is production is low, and that lowers the estimates of maximum sustainability, because maximum sustainability is largely based on recovery rates of the stocks. We can then actually use the catch monitoring data to determine how the yields on a daily or annual basis compare to the estimated maximum sustained yield. So these are cases here where we're looking at the MSY, which is just short of 3 tons per kilometer squared per year, and then we compare it to the production levels that are estimated from these stock assessments. And we did this in the various different areas. The high compliance closure, where there is no fishing, you would estimate the yields would be considerably above maximum sustained yield. But when you go to the marine reserves and the community closures and the fished areas, most of those are either near the maximum sustained yield, as in the marine reserves, or they're below the maximum sustained yield, depending on whether you're looking at resident fish or migratory fish, fishable biomass, target biomass, and non-target biomass. The target biomass is particularly interesting, where you can see that the marine reserves are just below maximum sustained yield, but very close to it, whereas the community closures and fished areas are considerably below the actual maximum sustained yield levels. So in short, these fisheries are overfished and will require some recovery to maximize the production the food and the food security of this fishery. We've been monitoring fish catch in these 5 landing sites here over time in order to do a fisheries dependent estimates of maximum sustained yield, and this one also shows that the maximum sustained daily rate for most of these areas is around 23 kilograms per kilometer squared per day, and most of the landing sites that we study are collecting often less than 10 kilograms per kilometer squared per day, and this is largely due to effort beyond the sustainable levels for the current stock levels. So this tells us something about where the fishery could go to what it could achieve, which is 23 kilograms per kilometer squared per day, and what it's currently achieving, or in this case, underachieving. It also tells us something about the income and the poverty levels of the fishermen. For instance, we've been collecting monthly fish prices and been able to multiply that out and figure out what the incomes of these fisheries are. And you can see that 2 of our landing sites are below the poverty level, and 3 of them are just above it. None of these fishermen are earning particularly large incomes, but there are some earning as much as $10 per day, depending on the month and where you live, but many of them are earning less than 350 Kenya shillings, or $3.50 per day, which is the poverty line in this fishery. One of the things we've been learning as well is been asking people about the future, what sorts of future they perceive, what benefits they perceive, and where do those benefits accrue. And we've asked people about 4 very likely scenarios that are ongoing within this region. One is the community-based management, which is largely what we're promoting through this project. A second one is offshore fishing, which is one of the projects of the national government. Another national government is ports and aquaculture development. And the fourth one is transboundary management. That is an ongoing attempt to develop a management system between Kenya and Tanzania in order to rectify some of the conflicts between these 2 countries in terms of fisheries management and other types of coastal management and development projects. What you can see in general, people are fairly positive about most of these activities, but the activity that has the lowest negative responses is the community-based management system that we're working with. The one with the most contentious is the ports and aquaculture development, and to some extent offshore fishing. If we ask people about the scale of this benefits to these 4 different scenarios, that is fisheries, nation, and the benefits to the self and the community, you can see slightly different views there, where community-based management generally has high benefits to fisheries and possibly a little less to the nation and self and community, but none of those are statistically significant. What we do find when we look at all of these is there is a difference between the self, community, and fisheries and the national plans. For instance, offshore fishing is seen to benefit the nation, but less so the fisheries and the self and community. That's particularly true with ports and aquaculture development, where people see it as having a negative effect on the fisheries, and also a possible negative effect on themselves and their communities. So this gives us some idea of the direction people are interested in going in the future, and possible conflicts between national development programs and some of the smaller scale programs often promoted by the NGOs such as ourselves. We've been doing community monitoring to determine what the best forms of monitoring are, and one of the ideas that we were testing was whether or not communities would be able to measure fish catch accurately, or as well as fisheries staff. And so we employed 2 fisheries staff and 7 fisheries community monitoring, and asked them to monitor their fish catches over time to get an idea of how they compare and who might be doing a better job at the measuring of those fisheries catches. The interesting and unexpected effect for us was that the community was actually better at monitoring fish catch than the fisheries personnel. One of the reasons is they collected more days of catch, and that resulted in more fishing effort being recorded, which is important to determine, but it also led to slightly higher estimates of yield, and incomes were not particularly different statistically. But there's some indications that the median catch was higher in communities. There was also higher skewness in the data, which is an indicator that the communities are picking up a more rare high catches, which is an important part of measuring fish catch accurately. There are a number of challenges for sustaining this project over time, and particularly for us to exit it. The poverty in these communities, the low incomes often make it difficult to make cost benefits of monitoring sensible. We hope to work closely with the Fisheries Department and the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute to talk about the possibility of turning over this data and data management system to them. But I think our long-term goals are to develop a digital system or a cell phone-based system of management where you can both enter the data to get a description of the fishery, but there would be an analysis associated with it, which would be prescriptive. That is, using our code and shiny apps to develop recommendations for the fishery based on the numbers that we've collected during this study. So our long-term plan is to ultimately create a system that's self-sustaining or very cheap to sustain through a digital cell phone-based descriptive data collection and prescriptive analysis.